Stop doing that. From the ship in the water or from the water to the ship using a line wire cable. A lot of people are going into depths about some of these topics, so certain ones I'm gonna kind of skim, but still give you probably more than you cared to know about this item. I can go in and out of the water too. Big deal. It is a big deal. And we're gonna start by talking about wires because they're really fun. They are really strong. We use a lot of tri-braid wires, getting things overboarded on the ship. That tri-braid doesn't lay super nicely on the winches when it's going down, but the three strands gives it that really good strength that we need to do heavy things like dredges or not heavy things like McLean pumps. These are rigid materials, though. Anytime you're cutting any line wire cable, you have to do a termination. That's going to look different for what material you're using. But when we're talking about the end of the wires, we're probably going to go for a Feege or a Nico press crimp. There's some that are hand crimps if you're working with little guys. There's some that have the big pushes, which is way easier. If you're looking to make this rigid material more mobile, maybe you add a turnbuckle or something that you can use. It's good for your lifelines at the edge of the deck, so you can drop those, but it's also a really nice strength member to have up most of the time. It's a more permanent example. You can also use it for a lot of different purposes as well as lifting structures. You can make your own bridles out of these or your own securing straps. These are really strong materials and you're crimping them with trawl winches. We can winch on deck if you're just trying to do a quick deployment or recovery. It's also really nice. Or you don't want to use like the 9/16 straw with the traveling block, you can use something much smaller and easier to move. You don't need like a whole thing for it. A lot of the natural fiber lines that we're gonna see are probably I don't need it, are probably just more like your nets and stuff anyways. Like we have a mock nest system and the IKMT, and you have all your plankton nets, and a lot of that stuff is gonna use more of the natural fibers. We don't like to use that as much on deck because the sun and the salt degrades it much quicker. It gets really brittle and it's hard to work with. Our beautiful IKMT is kind of sad, and that's okay. She's lived a good life. These are taglines. I'm going to talk to you way too much about them very soon. And this is an air tugger, but more importantly, my surfboard. And moving on.
On my computer.
Right. And I'm still fucking it up. Okay. If I see polypro, I'll throw it away. I think it's gross. It has a purpose for certain things, and it's a nice buoyant line, but a lot of the neutrally buoyant lines are a lot better and stronger. These degrade really fast in the sun, and then they give you the worst splinters ever. So I hate it, and I throw it away when I see it on my ship. End of the line, going back to the terminations. So what kind of line do you have? Do you have a braided? Do you have a cord? That's gonna depend on how you're gonna terminate this thing. Before you do like any terminations though, really, you probably want to hot knife it or give yourself a good cut so that those fibers aren't gonna start undoing itself, because you want that end of the line that you're gonna be working with to be its strongest. You can do things like splice a loop in it, whether it's soft, or putting a thimble or some kind of other thing into your termination. You can directly splice into whatever you're using. Long story short, lines are awesome because they're super movable and easy to use, while also giving you a lot of strength and security very quickly and more temporarily, whatever. Especially in comparison to wire. So this is more of like a comparison to 9/16s. And we're thinking about big mooring recoveries and big things that you're doing. This is a lot easier to throw in and out. You're not going to use a metal tag line essentially in a lot of those situations. But do you want some kind of special end in whatever line you're using? Do you want it to just be normal? Whip the end, keep your strength. But you use like a hollow fit. If you're going for the braided ones, you're going to loosen it up and braid it back in itself. And then if you're going for a cord, use these needles. I still call them all fids. But you just length it out based on whatever size of line you're using. There's a different fid size for it versus the braided. You're just going to open it up and tuck it back in on itself. I'm just a slug. How do I know how to splice all these things? There's so many things you can look at online. YouTube University is one of my favorite resources, especially because every time I splice, the line changes as I'm looking at it. I don't know how to do it anymore. So I like to go step by step with the YouTube. Samson's nice. They give you these beautiful PFDs for whatever you're using to do different splices. We're techs. Look it up. And these are also really good, and they can go really fast while you're working on deck if you need to repurpose a material that you probably already have handy to yourself to get something done. Why does this matter? Thank you, Slug. Because we use them a lot. So here's a bunch of deployments. Got the multi-core, got the mockness, blah, blah, blah. Everything is a package on the end of the line that you're trying to get into the water. The water is your strongest anchor in your deployment. You're trying to get it to that nice, hopefully more stable space. Sometimes it's sporty, but that's fun. And you want to find a nice area that's lower on your package. We're talking about that tri-braid wire, but the magical triangle of strength That's your best friend for overboarding, giving yourself 2 points of contact at least for moving materials around. Depending on the package, maybe you want a front tag in as well. Sometimes you get a little too taggy, so don't get line crazy, because you still have to clear them getting in the water. But we also have, this is the hoist again with a traveling block. There are taglines on either side of this because as you're A-framing in and out, you're going to be resetting that block. So remember, these are all temporary lines. As you're coming in and out, you want to watch all these on your A-frame, and as you're going overboard too, not permanent. Don't set it and forget it in this situation. You're probably putting it in the water and it's going to go do its thing for a really long time anyway. So just clean up your deck afterwards. But these are slips. They're slipped through the frame somehow and then pleated off to give you more strength. I'm not as strong as a multi-core. I'm not going to pretend I am. And I'm not as strong as a Machnis even, but cleats are. And so a lot of this in the next deployment pictures too are going to emphasize the accessories that you can use on deck to give yourself that security until you can get a better anchor point or into the water. Drop it like it's hot. If you're deploying things, sometimes the best way to do it is to just pop it. You can use sea catches, just pelican hooks. It can be small moorings, it can be gliders, it can be drifting arrays, whatever the case may be. Sometimes you don't need to get all that line in there. And so if you have a crane or even certain types of winches at your disposal, you can just hook in and pop it out. Big moorings, pop the buoy out, pop the weight out. If you ever can't fit it in your little pelican hook, that's okay, because you can just rig a sling to it, choker it on, pull it through this little guy, and then you have a much bigger loop. Just make sure that whatever sling you're using is rated to what you're trying to do. Every time you're doing this stuff, you're checking your lines, making sure everything's the right diameters that you want it to be, and doing your things. Slips, quickly go to tags, hopefully not in an emergency recovery, but when you finish your science and you're like, oh my God, that was awesome, let's get it back on board now. A lot of things can kind of similarly, like we drop it like it's hot, be tagged right on the top and brought overboard. Hopefully there's nice side tags on it to give you that magical triangle of strength and control. Sometimes you're just going to go in, get the hook on top, you get a glider or something, starts the helicopter of death. Hopefully not. But if you can have extra tags on things, it's really nice. I just had to do a recovery that didn't have beautiful bailing hooks. But these are also really cheap. And so you have to recover something and scientists don't have them. Maybe phrase it to help yourself in the future, because it's probably not going to go away. You're probably going to have to recover it again. So make your life easier. More recovery things. Yay. Sometimes you got to grapple. You don't want to get too close to the ship. I never thought I would be grappling for my job. That's sick. My grandparents loved that. Sometimes things are really heavy also, and so utilizing an air tugger and putting a hook on it to give yourself more control. That buoy is much larger than the multi-core before that I am already not stronger than. So clipping in to 3 air tuggers, we can get that into a much safer area for people to be working in on deck. You can have cleats leading those air tuggers too. You don't have to go straight in, but giving yourself the best leads for the best control at the base to move your package nice and low. You don't want anything really up high, swinging around crazy. It's not good for optics. It's not good for you. With tags, yay, we use these like super cute little hooks. And once again, we're using lines for them. This one is beautifully spliced, just magically go in the hook. This one, you gotta tie a knot. Oh no. As long as you don't tie it around your body, that's really good. You're winning. Don't tie anything around you. You don't want to go in the water with that package. I don't. I would love a swim call, but not with a buoy. But anyways, what else can I use to save my appendages? So glad you asked. Line leaders. Look at all these things. Kind of already been talking about cleats. These are movable ones that you can move around the deck, give yourself a better lead. A lot of times putting something or like a cleat down on the nose and being able to control it up forward is much more helpful than giving yourself another side tag. So sometimes it's just keeping that front level so you're not also bouncing in the swell or whatever the case may be. We have super cute little deck sheaves that will either clip in. It's really dark in that photo, but some of them have little clip-in hooks. So if you're moving and doing a lot of mooring stuff or quick work on deck, you can just clip them in and out of rainbows or movable D-rings or eye bolts like up there. If you're using some bigger stuff, but you don't have a hoist, you can set up a funny little line thing for your deployment angles. You want to make sure that you're angled to the to whatever main block that you're working on is not only good to use but safe to use. There's certain angles that you always have to consider when you're working with whatever winch to your A-frame. But if you need to give yourself a better lead, this is an easy way to do it. You just tie up an R6 or an R8 upside down, and then you can use capstans in and out a lot of the same way that you can use air tuggers. All of these different pieces of instrumentation all will tell you what they're rated to, what you can use them for, if there's special lines, whatever. R6 and R8 is a different diameter based on the shiv. So knowing what size you want to use before you just are putting random lines through it, you don't want to overload a block and have it blow up on you. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. There is so many things. If anyone's going to like rigging on Friday, rigging's really awesome. I have a little rigging handbook that I keep at my desk, and it has all of these fun little handouts that I have blurbed in here, but it tells you just about how not everything is equal if you were pulling at it at a different angle. Aaron kind of talked about this a little bit in his earlier talk, but eye bolts, we're threading all that stuff through it on the deck, but hey, when we're pulling straight up, it's going to change from when we're pulling at 90 degrees. We started using these a lot on our ships. They're really awesome. These little swivel hoist rings. They're good for doing different pull tests if you have to, but also it gives you a more favorable angle if you're trying to lead lines different places. It free swivels and moves its angle. Pretty cool. Glosson diagrams are really important. If you don't have them for your rigging that you're using every day on deck, I would really encourage you to have that. Work safe, work smart. You should know what your tools are, how to use them most efficiently, because in one of the last photos here, we have these deck cleats leading forward and aft. But when we look at this diagram, the deck cleat's actually strongest when using it at the side. That was a different deck cleat. This is from my deck cleat, but I know that, so you should, if there's different pictures of them. This is so cool, but I don't have any hands and I can't tie knots to utilize all these awesome tools that you're telling me about. Don't worry. Knots, we're gonna talk about them for just a little bit. But these are some that I think people should know. I'm gonna emphasize a few for different purposes, I guess. Bolins, I use these all day, every day. It helps you get a loop towards the end of the line. Alpine butterfly, kind of going back to don't tie it around your body. Really make sure that if you're doing the hand tying method, some people like that. Maybe like not under tension though, you know, that would be really cool for the community in your hands. But I use these whenever we're doing our EK80 calibration, getting shackles, random points in the lines, and then helps you jump rope the ship easier. If you've ever had to do EK80 cals, you probably will at some, maybe. I hope you don't have to jump rope the ship often. But these are really great for a lot of different deployment purposes, especially as a lot of people are using synthetics. Just make sure that you know what you're adding to each of these loops on your deployment line, keeping track of line weights, because I think a lot of people start using synthetics and they're like, oh my God, I have no wire weight anymore. I can add more stuff. No, things are still really heavy. And as you put out a lot of synthetic line, that's still going to be heavy. So just know your weights. If you can't tie a knot, tie a lot. Usually that applies to hitches. These are a few different hitches that I like to use, I guess. Clove hitch helps you tie up basically anything. If you have like a bimini or a cover for something too, it can give you a strong tension. Also, these are left and right-handed, so maybe sometimes you're trying to tie it and you're like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. You just need to tie it in reverse. So remember that. Marlin spike hitch. This is really good for giving yourself more strength. It doesn't have to be a Marlin spike, but you can put I don't know, this like spike wrenches on the deck or whatever it is to give yourself a better hold, but also a better it's a better hold, but like for tightening that line and like getting it really tightened down. Marlin spike hitch is gonna be one of your friends. Joining the lines of friendship. So you're either gonna do a sheep bend if your lines are of two different materials or sizes, or figure eight if it's the same thing. So if you have all the same stuff, you just do a little loop-de-loop, and then if not, you gotta cross it. You can't just do the loop-de-loop. Crazy, I know. Cleats, we use these literally all day, every day. But you can use them in a lot of different ways. So you're either cleating off fully, you can cleat off to literally anything. This is a seat clamp that I just was taking photos of knots in my office. And that's a movable cleat that we have on the bulwarks of our ship. They're very strong. You can just pop them off and move them around based on if you're doing different over the side operations or whatever. Once again, these two little cleats, this is tied off for a mooring though, so you might be like, wow, those people suck. But actually, if you cleat it off and knot it off, basically, sometimes when you're doing moorings, you get too much tension, you can't undo that cleat again. So you just keep on going, just keep on figure eighting. Oh my God, but I tied too many and they're too heavy. Please help me. Tension transfers for wuzzles. You can basically just loop another line around the line that you're using and then take up tension on that line. And the original line is going to move better for you. And in the case of like VMPs or things where you're dropping it in the current and it's trying to settle on its own, sometimes the line on top has just far too much paid out. And they love to wuzzle when they start shooting back up to the surface. Wuzzle's the technical term for a knot, and I like that word, so I say it a lot. But then you have to stop the ship and get the knot out every time and go back out until they figure out what their speed is, and it's a long night. But you can also just use it with slings and different things that you have on deck to move a big package that's kind of annoying or awkward to grab. So this one's super easy to use. You get a lot of awkward things moved around. And it's also good just for like mob and demob purposes, chokering on awkwardly shaped objects and equipment that scientists love to bring you that they made exactly for you. That's so hydrodynamic and not fun to tag. So all in all, leave it better than you found it. Pick it up if you can. Don't dump your stuff in the ocean. That's really all I have. If anyone has any questions, I'd love to talk about deck things forever. But thank you for being here.
Thank you. That's pretty cool. As a res tech on your boat, are you running the deck a lot, the back deck?
I'm like the deck safety officer, so a lot of other ships, it's like the bosun or one of the mates. I'm there signaling. I'm basically the liaison between the science party and the ship, so we talk a lot in the pre-cruise notes and kind of figure out, hey, this is what you're gonna bring, this is what I'm gonna bring. We meet up on the ship and we're like, hey, it's me. I sent you all those really annoying emails. I'm so sorry, but no, I'm not, because now we're gonna have a great cruise that everything is taken care of already.
Yeah.
He's laughing because I just had a cruise with him. Um, but yeah, then we go to sea and we do all the things, and I do all the overboarding with them. So like, as we kind of talked and had a relationship before, we get to do it all together on deck, and it's really nice. So.
Our bosun was kind of, he ran the back deck, we ran the side.
But even if you have a bosun or your crew doing all of this stuff, you should still know and be familiar with what you're deploying and what's on your ship, because hey, I need an extra hand or I need some help. You want to grab the right thing. You want to grab something that's actually used for lifting and not optics. And you want to know, like, hey, actually, friend, you're doing this deployment right now. I think we should go up in shackle size, whatever the case may be. But double check each other. We're all running around out there. So just look out for each other.
Too, as best that's.
I mean, usually we're like signaling to the winches. If it's one of our shipboard winches, the crew drives those. But if it's a portable winch, we'll have science help.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Question about deck plates for you. I saw you had your specs up there for a second. I don't know if that was specific to your ship, but do you know how much in general your deck plates weigh? And material, I guess, as well.
Enough for me to pick up and move around the deck.
Yeah,
I could
like
not
20
tell
plus.
you. Sure. I think it just depends on if you're using stainless or what material you're making it out of. So there's a few different like metal alloys you could use. And then also if you're gonna like paint it or whatever, that's up to you. Ooh, paint is like so heavy. But no, I don't know off the top of my head how heavy they are, but per ship we have like probably 4 to 6 movable deck cleats that I use quite often.
Different weights or all one?
No, they're all the same. And honestly, like between the deck cleats that you're moving and the A-frame cleats, that's if you have more questions about like, are you like trying to fabricate and stuff? These are the glossins that I pulled off of our wiki for our boats, but some people have like a circle down in here so that you can tie off your line directly into the cleat instead of having like an eye bolt next to it. Some people have like an older style or we have some that are older styles where it's basically like 2 pins and a bar. So some of those are heavier or lighter based on how much metal, but yeah, it just depends on if you're trying to minimize how many other things maybe you're using around yourself on deck, but the more you punch out the middle, the less strength you're probably gonna have in that package, so.
The eye bolt one is interesting because we have the exact same schematic, but for deck.
This is also just like pulled out of this book, so this isn't my actual glossin or whatever. But yeah, as you pull on it and like as you see different diagrams, it's kind of shocking sometimes. Like, oh, you lose a lot of power really quickly.
Well, it's interesting because the one that we reference is like the opposite of this, because looking at the deck socket, not the eye bolt.
Mm-hmm.
And as you have a higher angle, your working limit increases. So it makes me realize that I should have the two of them next to each other, because I need to consider the eye bolt and the socket.
Is that because your socket will go first before the eye bolt?
I'm assuming that that's why I haven't looked at it, but it makes me want to look at it now. Yeah.
Well, and like,
Because you have you have more support from the deck as you're going towards a 90-degree angle, whereas you're going straight up and the socket is at.
Something we don't talk about is that not all deck sockets are built the same.
yeah.
And a lot of people just assume this is a 2x2 pattern, it's all the same. No, like look underneath the ship, some are welded into the frame and some are not.
And then like our ship is 50 years old, like there was where I'd be like, wait, that one.
There's certain ones that you don't pick for the mooring anchors.
But we do test us, so we do some
Anything else?
I guess kind of building on that, when you have a deck socket, working load and a cleat working load, like, is there maps to do there, or do you just go with the lowest Whatever I guess the.
I mean, depending on what your overboarding system is, like Aaron touched on this a little bit in his talk before this about Appendix B. But when you're testing the sockets, you're testing the entire system. So you have to look at what am I deploying, and you have to test that for your whole system. And so typically if you're doing a water bag test or something and you're already using those sockets, you're testing that socket for the system. And so that's your standard then for if it's up to the deployment that you're going to be doing and the rates for that. It's not always like, don't get me wrong, scientists love to come and say, like, this is the ship, and I'm gonna max out every potential of this ship, space and strength wise. And you're like, sick, I love to hear that. But they're not going to our eye bolts and trying to calculate that. They're looking at the whole like overboarding system and what weight they're gonna use for that. So, but it's still good to know and still good to test.
I got a question then about testing those sockets. We just went through a big arbitration. Part of that was to pressure test all the sockets and hydraulic thing. They weren't testing the whole system. It was just 15,000 on each socket. Why would they?
Well, you have to test it still isolated to know that, like, hey, when I tested this whole system and I saw a failure, you like more quickly would figure out what your failure point is. But also, like Andrew was saying, every deck is different and everyone has to test their sockets differently. Aaron was also talking about this on the one before, but that tester is really great. But once again, you know your deployment weight when you do the testing of that deployment system. You're testing it then because once again, when they're doing that hydraulic test too, they're not changing the different angles that you're getting at sea. The biggest problem at sea with all of these equipment is that you're never getting a straight up angle or a straight 90-degree angle. You're bobbing and weaving the whole time. So knowing your weaker points, but it's the whole package at the end of the day.
Another one, a little off topic. You guys use cable grips for?
Yeah, guide grips.
Guide grips. Do you set those before you use them, or do you just?
Like termination, like pull test kind of a thing. Yeah, we're moving more to pull testing everything. But overall, I think that's a talk that a lot of people have been having. But it's not like a feed where you have to set it as part of the termination process. And once it's on there, like it's on, the guide grips stay on.
In the 322, and the 322 talk, they showed some pretty significant difference between unset and set. I think she pulled the 2,000 pounds 5 times. And broke right around 10,000 pounds, where unset was around 6. So it's pretty interesting. I never really. I don't know if
Yeah, this is a whatever.
People.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, because now with wire testing as well, we submit a wire cut that has a cable grip on it or whatever termination we were just using. So if you're on the 916 and you did a Nico press, you cut the end with that termination, and then they get another section of just the wire. Typically speaking, if you lose something, I think you're gonna lose it when a lot of the wire is paid off. Like hopefully it's not at your termination, but a lot of big lift cruises, regardless of what you're using, you end up doing a pull test at the beginning because they're bringing a portable winch that you have to pull test to, or yeah, we're doing a feed and you have to pull test anyways to set that term. So it just kind of depends on what it is, but yeah, that's when we used to be using eye bolts, and that's also why I put these swivels in here, but we've started to use these for pull testing a lot of our wires and cables because it gives you strength at all angles instead of trying to sling through eye bolts to do a pull test or have a D plate on hand all the time. They're super small. They take up very little space in your cabinet of things that you need at sea, and you can use them for a lot of different things. But you can get them in
one deck socket.
It's one deck socket. So a lot of times, like, you don't just want to go from one, so you still set up multiple and do the sling through. You're not gonna just, you'll rip out your deck. So.
That's why you.
Good.
In that scenario.
Mhm.
Cool.
You guys can go walk around and look at the ocean. You don't have to keep looking at it. If anyone else has any other chats, yeah, it's really important. Everyone is going outside. We want to work smart, work safe, help each other out. But going on deck is a big part of why we tech at all. So I think it's really important to just like do basic talks, check in with each other and be like, oh my God, I love Dyneema. You want to talk about Dyneema line? Oh my God, I would love to do it. Yeah, you know, everyone has their thing. But the end. Yeah.
What time is low tide?
Oh, yeah, I'm so glad that you asked. Because the full moon was actually this morning and low tide is at 14:57. There's some rocks up there that have some sleds sometimes if you want to run away. I'm not telling people to leave Tara, I swear. Yeah, the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh no, I was just looking at the robot the whole time. You are recording. You are not recording. I was gonna lose it.